Having just passed the eclipse midpoint, I thought it would be a perfect moment to look forward to our upcoming eclipse season that takes place in late September. There are a variety of events happening both on the forefront of the world stage and in the cosmos that I feel are noteworthy and may influence the energy of the market as a whole. You should see a few confluences emerge as we move along. I have all the points plotted out on the Bitcoin chart, and you can see there are a decent amount of events happening this fall. This isn't meant to be all-inclusive, but to focus on the events around the eclipses as they prove time and time again to have a major influence on the world and its markets. So our journey begins actually before the eclipse comes in on September 1st when Uranus is at station. At station means stationary, or that it appears to be stopped in the sky. Uranus in finance represents innovation, disruption, volatility, financial technology, and unconventional aspects in general. This date was brought to my attention by Christine Skinner's Full Moon newsletter. She is a financial astrologer who predicted the 2008 global financial crisis as well as the war escalations that took place this last year. But she predicted these recent geopolitical events as far back as 2016. This newsletter here is where she discusses Uranus and station. She says, arguably the key date is September 1st when Uranus arrives at its station. This planet has a reputation for bringing the unexpected and is unlikely to disappoint. Events might even be enough to require a rethink of the planned November U.S. presidential election. With the October eclipse aligned exactly with the asteroid Astrea, legal matters could yet dominate. Obviously, something big could be taking place if it would require a rethink of the election, and out of the whole eclipse season, she highlights this date as potentially the most important. She comments also that history may yet show that the events of mid-July 2024 are linked to the solar eclipse on October 2nd. Consider the near assassination of Donald Trump, the political chaos that followed the elections in France, and new government in the UK, Israeli pressure in Gaza, China halting potential deals with the US as tension regarding Taiwan increases, the list goes on. These events coincided with the lunar node crossing the zodiac degree of the forthcoming eclipse. Incidentally, that degree was highlighted at the attempted assassination of Teddy Roosevelt in October of 1912, a degree that will be activated again in September. Also noteworthy is Neptune's position at 29 degrees and 55 minutes Pisces at the recent assassination attempt. Neptune last occupied this degree at the start of the American Civil War. As viewed from Earth, Neptune will pass this position again in 2025. So again, these planetary alignments have historically happened with previous assassination attempts as well as the American Civil War. So perhaps think of this date as a continuation of the drama unfolding on the world stage and an event that might be significant enough to change the US elections. I'll go more into that in a moment. Our second event that I have mapped out is a presidential debate that is supposed to take place on September 10th. Will it? Who knows? But this date occurs just 9 days after Uranus is in station and 1 day before 9/11. So with that 9/1 numerology, it seems possible that something doesn't go quite as planned here. Our third event is the Fed rate meeting, which takes place on the September 17th on the harvest moon, which is also a full moon. This is typically a time when the market is bearish anyway, so it would make sense that the market doesn't like something that the Fed does. The 17th and into the 18th, depending on where you are in the world, will be the lunar eclipse. So referring back to the newsletter, she says, the September lunar eclipse in Pisces aligns with Neptune, the planet associated with loss. You may remember that another September full moon coincided with the collapse of Lehman Brothers, and anniversaries often bring echoes. It is worth noting that the actual degrees of the zodiac involved link this eclipse to some major tech companies like Microsoft, Dell Computers, etc. Activity in this sector could bring down many indices. So as we discussed, this time frame will already be bearish or some type of pause at a high, so perhaps there will be bank failures in this time frame, which will be convenient because the Fed meeting will already be over by the time the eclipse comes in. I do expect us to continue on a general uptrend into this next eclipse season, being that the recent eclipse midpoint seemed to act as a reversal. As the cycle progresses, we should see the amount of time shorten between advances, so it makes sense that instead of pivoting on the eclipse, that the midpoint may become more important. This is just my opinion based on the data we've seen, which you can see it was a low, a high, and a low. Those are the old eclipse seasons. And then a high, and then the midpoint seems like it's acting like a low. Then the fall equinox takes place between the lunar and solar eclipses, and these moments also have been known to cause sudden volatility. Fall is met by Pluto squaring Venus, so that's a 90-degree angle in the sky, which can bring about banking stories or financial reforms. This could be some kind of call to action. Fall is the season where everything starts to die, which is eerily similar to the rest of what seems like will be ritualized on the political landscape during this time frame. It does seem like there will be some type of continued drama that ritualizes death of all kind, so having another partial death of the old system would be perfectly fitting. I think also a perfect example of irony would be having a shitcoin like XRP rise from the dead somewhere between the eclipses. Having XRP make a big move as Bitcoin reaches price discovery is typically what we see, so it seems fitting they will match some type of narrative to that move. On the October 2nd eclipse, the moon and sun will both be in Libra, which is all about balance, justice, and harmony. Pluto is also trine, or in a triangle to the sun and moon, which will add a transformative quality to this timeline. This happens a day before the end of the US fiscal year, so there's a lot of potential transformative action taking place here. It's possible we might even become aware of how screwed the US is in relation to its debt. Imagine if they had to close the government down during the elections to pay the bills. It would completely mess up the voting system and erode confidence in the election process as a whole, which aligns perfectly with what Christine Skinner suggested in that it would cause a rethink of the planned November U.S. presidential election. Makes sense to me. After this comes Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year. A few years ago, this event essentially marked the exact top on the DXY, or US dollar. In terms of crypto, it seems it can be a good buying or selling point. The Draconid meteor shower happens as Rosh Hashanah comes to a close. Meteor showers can cause more excitement in the markets, although this one is supposed to be pretty mellow. With that said, I did find some connections really interesting. The meteor shower originates from the Draco constellation. Draco was a lawmaker from 7th century BCE, hence the term draconian laws, referring to overly harsh or strict policies. Draco's legal code was one of the first written in Athens, which prescribed the death penalty for even minor offenses. Draco, the constellation, represents a dragon in mythology, and Draco is also Latin for dragon. Being that it is the Chinese year of the dragon and in context with Libra's role during the solar eclipse, I thought this was a notable celestial confluence. There really does seem to be a lot of legal issues during this next eclipse season, and that might just be the perfect time to kill, or settle, the Ripple lawsuit. Finally, SIBOS has a global conference starting on October 21st, just as we wrap up eclipse season. There will be some big names there, as you can see. Some of these are Ripple partners, others are here like Chainlink and many others. This seems like it could be some good news to add to the fire. Their agenda is really interesting too, in that they're going to be discussing the intersection of AI and ISO 20022. I think this is really huge because it tells you that the banking industry is incorporating AI specifically in financial crime prevention. Then, of course, there's also CBDCs, fund tokenization like the stock market, fast and efficient cross-border payments, which, it's really interesting to see AI and ISO 20022 being mentioned together at a big global conference with so many well-known exhibitors, especially given the connections to Pluto during the solar eclipse and how that typically does highlight transformative changes. So it makes me wonder if there will be some big news that comes out of here. As I see it, there is news that could drop at any moment for XRP, like an ETF or the end of the lawsuit. Likely, I think the end of the lawsuit will happen first, and it seems like there is a similar legal and banking energy happening in the cosmos around eclipse season. Historical patterns suggest that these celestial events and alignments often coincide with major financial shifts, and this fall appears to be no different. I do especially have somewhat of a premonition that there will be financial issues for the US government as the fiscal year ends that will somehow affect the voting system. It seems like a really convenient way to accomplish a number of things like diminishing the faith of those who still have faith in the current system. If this ends up in a win for Kamala, which I do somewhat suspect with how one-sided everyone thinks this election is for Trump, this would again cause more division in the masses and would lead to a potential civil war, whether it's kind of cheese and scripted or not. just as Skinner commented about the position of Neptune during the recent assassination attempt and how it will be in the same position in 2025, personally, I think that means there will be a series of events that unfold beforehand. And if this election is again stolen from Trump, it could rile up the base even more when they realize they have to hear 4 more years of how the president of their country uses she/her pronouns.
Ain't nobody got time for that. Ain't nobody got time for that. Ain't nobody got time for that. Ain't nobody got time. Ain't nobody got time. Ain't nobody got time for that. Ain't nobody got time for that.